오야 다치로 넘어서 서서서더니 산에 가와려 여봐 이나이더니 오다 되고 듣기고 요이래와요 더니 다시 되려 뭐요스
So first of all, to all of my Dharma friends, wherever in the world you are, I hope that you are well and I hope that you are happy, and I offer you my tashidele, my best greetings.
아니 들이요 드세 뒤들했더니 이나였더니 알아서 아니 매일이 짜쳐못해 아니 뭐세 여보 간디선도 가래 이니 메제 손도 도야 같이 뭐 가르가래요 어다 티걸 때에서 시작이스
And so today, in this short time, I'd like to explain how, having achieved this human body, we can direct our life in a positive direction, how we can improve ourselves. So I'll explain a little bit about that.
아니 야 시부터 뭐 감기 수야 지발에 돼요 내가 춘주지는 거 코네 대대바이나 어다 춘주대고 땜보이면 때서 커버를 때네 아니 내가 땜보대 더 토고 말해스
So the holy beings give this advice commonly, which is the more sort of immersed or the more obsessed we remain with chasing after just these small momentary happinesses, not only will we not be able to achieve that temporary happiness, the happiness on the temporary level, but certainly we won't achieve ultimate happiness.
내가 때에서 뒤사버서는 뭐데 되네 내가 때에서 자첨보 아니 땜본다고 아니 든지 체트 보게 레가스는 지더 토바이나 내가 추시대지 릴라보게 두는 용대한다고 제도 아니 깔레면이 거까지 하랬어.
The thing here is that if we strive to achieve a deep happiness, that vast happiness, that powerful ultimate happiness, if we work towards that goal, what we will find is that because of working towards that ultimate happiness, naturally we achieve the smaller happinesses as well, and we also experience fewer problems or difficulties.
다 던지지 이자 다 드린 안도 소원을 해야 돼. 만으로서 나 세야 돼도 나이 셈세야 돼. 아니 가와 받은 로토 그래. 아니 다 야 대시 타투 간디실은 받은 로야요 아래. 다 디고를 소지
So today what I'd like to explain a little bit, it goes back to that we call the self and that we call my mind. I would like to talk about where the final destination that we call the self and that we call my mind can reach. That destination of final or stable happiness.
다 대요더니 그 벌러저거 로마 아야데와 사한테 답해 할래야 어느 개발침 못해서 쉬워래. 디게더니 유자 첨보 아마시 잡아 사지기 수토전에 진노니 술로까지 지게 도는마 대시자가 있어.
And so in order to explain this, then in terms of the verse, it comes from a student of Nagarjuna named Aryadeva, who was a very, very sort of great scholar, and then based upon this verse, I will give some explanation based upon this shloka.
다 어떤지 다 술로까지 간지스레 잘라봐 이나 세노 멈바 동보도 바다도나 도바시 타마타시 거도바 대시테는 개바이스.
So Geshe has read the verse which comes from a scripture called Aryadeva's 400 stanzas. So it goes something like this. First, overcome non-meritorious actions. Then, refute the self. Finally, with view, completely reverse all. Those who know this are skillful, or those who know this are scholars.
그래서 다 뒤치대 이리 민주 소소소가 다 받도록 되네라. 시티 동보디 가르세거든. 이바디 가르세거든. 치우 라토나 할레베 바차 만다와지도 니파 만다와지 텐데 소소 인디아레스.
So when we approach a verse like this, we should think about it in terms of what is the first line indicating, what is the second line indicating, what is the third line indicating. And if we can develop that understanding and also hold that within the mind, we're able to establish a very positive imprint or positive potential within ourselves.
다 나로서 강가로로 기발에 여츠 끈든 내와요 돼야돼. 대화 배트 누가 때문에 매비게 대화 지금 하루서 내와요 아레스. This is what it is.
One thing which is very clear is that all of us, whoever we are, not only do we want happiness, but we want that stable happiness that is completely untouched by suffering. We all want that.
어떤 내방 노지 로사요아르에서는 대웅 나세하던 누가 땐데 매비 대화는 로토요아르 로사요아르스.
And then the next question becomes, can we, or can that we call the self, reach that happiness completely beyond suffering? Yes, it's possible.
다 이나요. 아니 멋지게 놀 때가 로드 토거르베세나. 아니 다 가시를 마도 리라고요 말때. 레알 리라고요 말았어.
But perhaps another question comes, is it possible to reach that goal of lasting happiness in one lifetime? It's possible maybe for a very few limited number of people, but for most it will take longer.
다 알레 빼 거데모다 와샤바이나 누가 땐데 매비가 누가 땐데 매비가 대와시 저바이나 콘도 빼도 좀아서 그거야. 대서야 될라. 멋지는 간도 소소 다시 지나 내라 오면 되와. 하고 되와.
So why is this the case? Well, if we want to achieve that happiness that is completely beyond suffering, we need to get rid of afflictions. One of those afflictions is anger, and so if you try to completely get rid of your anger, to completely clear it away, you will see that that is something that is not such an easy task.
다 던지치라 누가 땐데 매비 대와야지라 타바스 미도하게 하래. 스테데알 릴라고 매아이다. 지치는 샤와 야자 먹고 시그레. 지치는 오샤와 가셔가 노노. 다 멋지게 놀 가셔도 도끼무야.
And so because that happiness which is completely removed from suffering, which we call the state of liberation, because it requires to accomplish those difficult things, for many beings this will take hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes. For a limited number of beings it may take a few lifetimes, and for a very, very small number of beings it might take one lifetime.
샤와 자토 뭐 샤와 뭐 그리는 가신 구바이나요. 너와 타바세한테 누가 땐데 매비게 대와테 대할 구바이나요. 녀를 가르그 요르세나 세노 몸바 돈보도 샤데 대자치 뭐 돼야지. 가디이나 녀수고 때도 꽈둬야지. 안들래가 그거 요레스.
So, let's say that it takes hundreds of lifetimes to reach this liberation, and we want to reach this state of liberation, which is happiness beyond suffering. So then, in order to do that, we need to have a good basis for achieving that liberation. So, this comes to the first line of the verse. First, overcome non-meritorious actions. Stop those non-meritorious actions which would lead to unfortunate births.
다데데알 쪼쪼데 드니 다 드리 같이 뭐 드셔도 장도도 드니 게자 뭐지 요르든 쪼데라 무게지 봉고 수저 무게 와체테 가제 다다 과도 겨와체테 가제 다다 서든 요와스이나 다 맞은 데르기 봐 셰와네 셰와를 때자치 뭐 고가지 요바 이자 세노 몸바 돈보도 사케지 셰바레스.
So, of course, there are many things that are related to this first line, which is actually expressing the stages of the path of the small scope. You could speak about refuge and other things. But here we understand mainly we are talking about abandoning non-meritorious actions. So here we can think about abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions as much as possible. Then, cultivating their opposites, the 10 virtuous actions, and on this basis, one is able to go from happiness to happiness, good rebirth from lifetime to lifetime.
다지 주야 소소고 여보 소노도 헬레 제바이나 단 니까를 계속 여봐. 다 뒤로 계속 여봐. 저 모토 비트니 깔레 가보래요 말이스.
If you think about it, by engaging in this practice, you will be able to come to temporary happiness, work towards ultimate happiness. And if you think about the application of this practice, it's not something that's impossible. It's not something that you cannot do.
쪼쪼데 링어 유서 그토니라 예를 가제 내바도나 소설 칠때 링어 유서 그토니 소설 벽에 논증 양바도 드리스 마데와 수요소나 소설 강에 용도 와스 대 노질 예라요 링어 유서 그토니 기본 매박을 내가 스테바이나 어느 먹여와서 하는 거 할때 거아무도 싫어요 말이 여보잖아.
So, if we understand this principle, we understand that based upon our activities of body, speech, and mind, if we give an unpleasant expression, if we do unpleasant, harmful things to others, then they will return that. And similarly, if based upon our actions of body, speech, and mind, we engage in what is unwholesome or harmful towards others, we similarly accumulate negative karma, non-meritorious actions.
쪼쪼들 소설 예를 대화기 받는 소설라면 대화 그거 요아래 소설 대화기 받는 예라면 대화 그거 요아래 던디게 돈에 손으로 돈 내라 아니 먹여왔지 될 거야 여왔지 돼야잖아 단단히 소설 끼고 쳐야 거가 뭐 요아래
So if we understand this basic principle that just as others want happiness, I wish for happiness, just as others wish for happiness, just as I wish for happiness, others wish for happiness, if we understand that principle,
Sino magiwache kwaya don giwache deya tel tandane ki wocha so koga mombo yares.
then it is very easy to abandon the 10 non-virtues, cultivate the 10 virtues with a happy mind. We definitely have this opportunity.
Ota ale didiji da tente chires no momba tombo do sa shiu chunga de tomo yulon jana basik yares dan no jitu ne tes mombo yares.
So this was a brief explanation of that first line. First, overcome non-meritorious actions, expressing sort of in a very concise way the stages of the path of the small scope. And of course, we understand that normally it encompasses more topics.
Ota tendo didi cheba yin zo de lende tembo chini sunin do ya tene te nes.
So if we think about what the small scope is presenting, though, the sort of main thing, it would be guarding our actions in accordance with cause and effect. We could say that.
Ota nombe ge lende sa cha chembo se ge ya isa le zumbo le ya po tela seno ge le nyamba le ducha tela seno maimbe le sene tandati ke chen yu yares.
And so in terms of these words, of course, we understand that in Buddhism, karma or cause and effect is important. And so there are different words for it. So here, positive activities, or what is wholesome, we call meritorious actions. Negative activities, or what is unwholesome, we call non-meritorious actions.
Tere ta te tembo se na ane kadina la do mei te cha chembo chi to ne la po ya po su su na. Ta ti ten de tene tawan ro ya ga. Lunga ten de me be. Tene dewa de ya tele tene la ka che ko ka mo mo yu yares.
And if by observing this law of karma, what we can do is recreate the causes to be able to achieve higher rebirths in the realms of humans and devas and the celestial beings, and then upon the basis of those rebirths, then we can cultivate towards liberation, lasting happiness.
Ba ta dan do ba she sa ti won ji de to mo yu lan ja ran ba ti ga. Ane dan za mari ba zo shi be ya la ndia jo kong do ta nyemo kanga pa kwa ya ta la. And
so now we come to the discussion of the stages of the path, the middling capacity. Here the text says, then refute the self. So specifically this means to refute the ignorance grasping at the self. The ignorance grasping at the self, which is the root of all of the other afflictions, for example, attachment, anger, and so forth.
Duno ti koron no pa de dan do ba she ser zawa ti shidu ma sun zawa te dan mari ba de isa ko chi ko to sona ye lo kang ga ko ndo yo isa pa de dan do ba she.
Then refute the self. So Geshe is just explaining that we understand that in the middle scope we are lessening the afflictions, but because the ignorance grasping at the self is the root of all those afflictions, we target that directly, because then all the branches will be dealt with.
다wana 대치보 나로서 저거래 sana 나로서 현재 요도 다 첨보래 현재 요도 대저기 세계와 이자 된다고 말해 타마다시 거도 봐.
So is that enough? Is it enough to refute the self? Well, we understand that bonda nanso chipo 되게 말했어.
현재 요도 다 첨보 선 저거 여러 봐. 어때 이자 현재 요도 대저기야 이자 다 너무 뽕아지 뭐 타바 존지 당하는 저거야 말해.
So because all sentient beings are precious and all sentient beings are close to us, then merely the abandonment of the afflictions for liberation, this is not enough. So finally we come to this last verse which reads finally with view reverse all.
다 될 가르고 여서나 너무 매봐서 아마제 너무 바쳐도 집아 매봐서 그거야 이자 타마다시 거도 봐 tumban이세 때 리빈노도 타이비 거니 그게 통통해야지 그거야.
So here, finally, with view reverse all, this means that addressing with this realization of emptiness, not just the afflictions, but also the imprints left behind by those afflictions. And in this way, being able to completely reverse them. And this happens by engaging with emptiness through the thousands of different reasonings, the countless different reasonings.
리빈노도 타이비 거니 tumban이로 손을 또야 되고 되네 대뒤 주어달라면 되네 좀봐도 이제 자와지 비쇼지 세우 거 오면 봐 주를 마요 롱요다고 내용 거래.
And then as we engage with this emptiness of 1,000 reasonings or whatnot, then sort of inevitably, as the assisting factor to this, we must engage with the method practices of bodhicitta rooted in love and compassion.
어다 던지게 내서 중앙에는 되는 존재지 야 가르쳐 그런 건도 시부 챔피언론처럼 봐 사진 원래 제 도벌에 있고요. 다 뒤에 되는 손지사 뒤로 아래 소소.
And on this basis, then, together with the view and this mind of bodhicitta, we engage in the stages of the path of the great capacity or the great scope, which can take us to the final goal of Buddhahood.
어다 될 로숨 세나다 손주 로르 챔보 로른 진보 어다 로르 야케자 뭐뭐시 대하데 론저좀 봐 성세하데 어다 결로 좀 뒤로 아래스.
And so this is the sort of formula which is expressed in the stages of the path of beings of the three capacities, which you find in the great treatise on the path to enlightenment, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, the Lamrim Chemu, the middle-length treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, the Lamrim Timbo, and the brief stages of the path to enlightenment.
어다 멀리 여보 뭐세 여보 이님이 저 로스 야 로스 대파가비 오늘 가서 됐던 요래도 아니 야기 고치는 거지.
So please, on the basis of achieving this human rebirth, then with a happy mind, very happily embark on the practice of cultivating the stages of the path of these three scopes.
야 되지.
Thank you very much, Bulente.